Okay guys, so today I wanted to show you some gameplay analysis from ladder. I saw a bunch of comments that were asking for replays, and also I've seen comments on the Discord, on my videos, on other videos about how good certain 1 or 2 card combos are. And I think a lot of these types of comments show that people don't actually playtest the deck and they just see other YouTubers' comments on like broken combos you can do or whatever. And you really have to actually play the deck to see that a lot of the stuff that looks broken never actually happens because your opponent exists. Like, they're not sleeping. So I wanted to show some replays with one of the more generic versions of the deck. So this is a pure version, so White Forest Toy, where I'm maxing out on the toy stuff. I'm not playing Rota, actually. I had some issues with space here where I was trying to fit some other stuff into. And I eventually settled on a version that is on 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 hand traps and 3 Black Goat. Now, this is a very, very interesting card because it has flex on the dice roll, whether or not you are going first and you send it to the grave or you get it back with Diabel or whatever. Both effects are relevant. If you're going second, it's one of those cards that can help you push through stuff because as long as you can send it to the grave for cost, which should be almost any hand, you still can use the grave effect to push through stuff like an Apo or an SP or whatever it is. So I like this card, and one of the problems, which will come up in the replays, is that sometimes you draw a lot of hand traps, and even though it is not good, sometimes you have to like get rid of an imperm to be able to play. Like you have to ditch it as cost to be able to play, and having all monster hand traps really hurts you in some of those scenarios. So having another spell or trap in my non-engine count I thought would be helpful. And I thought it was a little bit risky to play Purge, Dominus Purge, because it does turn off certain effects that are kind of relevant. So other things to note are that I like the Rabbit in the pure version. It gives you access to cards like Silhouette Trick, which help in the Tenpai matchup, especially when they hard draw the Sanguine Summoning, which is a huge pain to deal with, especially because in my standard combo, I like to search the Nib Veiler, which is, incredible against basically any deck besides a hard-drawn Sanguine Summoning. Packbit is somewhat interchangeable with Vorpgate. I'm just playing this because it's a little easier to make, and so therefore easier to, like, in a grind to access. This is not really a serious card right now before we have Molcharmi Furos, but and this also here is mostly for popping the Sanguine Summoning. So yeah, not a complete version. If you have any ideas or things that you would make better or suggestions for changing, you can let me know. But basically, I'm trying to max out on the good starters here, which, I play more Sylvie because I'm on pure. And because you only have this engine to cycle through, I'm playing almost maxed out on the tuners. It's just that Rusi is like the worst one to draw by itself. And then 3 Tails. Okay, so that is the deck profile. That I don't know if I made any small adjustments during the games that I played, but anyhow. So I have 3 different matches. I have Tenpai, a mirror match, and Virtual World. And the Virtual World was actually kind of interesting. So I'll go through these 3 matches. I will try not to take too long. Here also, just what I should mention is you are going to have hands like this where you have to start by normal summoning the Rusia, and it is unfortunate, but it is what it is. Yeah, I needed to make like the Tails live, and I have the Goat in hand, but there's no reason to use the Goat if I could get a body on field. So I bring out the Soldier and I get access to the box, but I've already used my normal, so the Sylvie that I drew, otherwise I obviously would have started with the Sylvie, because even if it got hit, I could have at least specialed the Rusia, sent another card, and then continue playing, but I drew the Sylvie. So we activate box here, and I activate Tails because now this allows me to continue extending because I can get the LZ and I can continue playing here. So the tank comes out here and I make the Arciela. And then the tank brings out the LZ because I didn't have... actually, wait. Was this I think this might have been a mistake because I should probably have just brought out the Estelar to get into rotation. So anyhow, and then I make Gallant Granite, so I have the Nib Veiler in hand, so that's great, and I have access to the Woes. One of the really cool things that you should pay attention to when you're playing the pure version is you don't want to just have like only Woes set and Diabel, because obviously if you use the Woes, you don't have something to send off of Diabel, and you would prefer not to get rid of your box. So having the Tails in rotation, like if you've used it and you add it back off Diabel after you summon it, is the free card that you use as this send, so you're not ever in a position where you have to send the Woes. So having these 2 cards in rotation in your opponent's turn is always good. So here they summon Nyan Nyan, and I'm like, who is playing this deck? And he activates Virtual World Kirin in hand. And so here, Black Gold is useful because you declare a monster card name and then neither player can special summon that this turn. And so this deck, I'm thinking, this deck is not like a great deck. It is actually very similar conceptually to our deck in that it is inherently a 2-card combo deck that has to play, non-engine to not lose on the dice roll, but also has issues with space of non-engine. He does have some extension here. And so I bring out the Silvera so that it will activate on a new chain and he won't be able to continue making plays. So they get booked, but he has the talents. And then he places one of those so that he can continue playing. And there's nothing else he can do really after. Like there's no extension. There's no target for the Lao Lao in the grave. So, yeah, he loses the first game. Now in the second game, I believe he's going first. So he activates this card. I just have Nib in hand. And I used to play this deck years ago, but there's some new cards. So this card, I think I misunderstood and I thought that he was going into something else. So I thought that I had to Nib as soon as possible. But I think I was confused. So this card says once per turn you can also XYZ summon it using a rank 3 or 4. Can't use this material while it has material. Once per turn, you can detach up to 2 materials from this card. Add armored XYZ cards with different names from your deck to your hand equal to the number detached. And I don't remember what the combo is. I know it's something that Mermails might play in Rage of the Abyss, and so I nibbed here, but I think that was a mistake, and I should have held the nib. Because whenever they have this trap in the grave, that's like their extender, so they can bring out a card and then continue playing, and so he ends up being able to make the Chen Ying. And then he gets a search from Gigi in the end phase to get the Lulu so that he has follow-up on the next turn. And he also has Medora, the Sword Oracle, in the grave, so he does have some interruptions. So I basically, my only starting play, like I could set the Soldier and activate Box and pop it, but that doesn't really give me anything that I don't already have. So my only real starting play is normal summoning the Sylvie to turn my Tails live. And because I've used my normal summon, I need to search the LZ. So I activate the Box here and I set the Soldier and the Tank from my deck, leaving one in my hand. And I send the Soldier for cost, and here he immediately changed the Medora and shuffles the Soldier back, which is, I don't know. I mean, there's probably not an optimal place to use the Medora here, but like normally you would want there to be at least another target in the grave. But maybe he's thinking that he just wants to stop me as early as possible and get a banish so that he can use the Chen Ying. And that maybe that will be enough to stop me laddering with the Synchro stuff. So, maybe the play was fair enough. But anyhow, so there's the Rusia now. I bring out the tank, and the tank brings out the pack bit. Now, I wasn't sure what the ideal play was here because I couldn't just beat over with Draco Berserker, I didn't think. Or actually, wait, no. Yeah, no. Yeah, I could have. No, because you don't get it from the token, right? Because I think this is original attack. If it destroys an effect monster and it's not even an effect monster, yeah, no. So I guess it was I would either banish it off of Little Knight or I would make the pack bit, and I was thinking the pack bit might be more useful for laddering at some point. But yeah, anyhow, he activates the Chuche and he pops the pack bit, which was honestly better for me because if I have the woes set, I can like make a synchro play on their turn. I think it might have been better if he popped this card. So he starts with the Lulu that he got from last turn, and I activate the White Forest, but he pops the material that I needed to synchro with. And I don't have anything to shuffle back to bring out my other card. So there's no way for me to make the synchro play, and I end up just getting a search. And then he goes Lao Lao, and now he's starting to swarm the field. And he goes for this crazy play where he's dumping the Water Enchantress off of Beatrice, which should be banned, to get the Rite of Aramisair. And now here's what's interesting, right? So this card, this is the one that I think they'll play in Mermails, is you can XYZ summon it using a rank 5 or 6, but he's bringing it out with a trap. And once per turn, if an equipped card becomes equipped to a monster you control, you can attach one monster your opponent controls to this card as material, which is crazy because it's non-targeting and it's like a very weird type of removal where it makes something a material. So yeah, using that engine, he brings out the Draco Sack and then he equips my card, and so I lose. And then so for the third match here, I finally start with a box and a good starter. And so I start going into a regular combo, and I think that he doesn't have hand traps. Like, I feel like he might have been on breakers because of how he was playing the previous game. So I think, like, I don't need to do the Apo first or whatever. I'll just go into slightly more optimal plays with the rabbit and whatever. And that's the cool thing about, if you played, like, if you're getting to like game 3 or whatever, you usually have an idea of the kind of non-engine your opponent is playing. And so this is one of the standard boards that I like to make, which is the rabbit, the little knight, and the diabel. And you have the nib and the veiler in hand. Whatever your target was for rabbit, in this case is silhouette trick, but it could have been Azirun. And then we have the woes. And I just, I wanted to keep the box in hand for follow-up in case he had some blowout card. So yeah. So he activates this card, and if you don't know Virtual World very well, it won the Spanish Nationals like a month ago or whatever, is they usually need a Virtual World name on field so that they can special summon a Virtual World card from their hand, and that's how they get their engine in rotation. So I chain the Diabel to bring out the Silvera so that it will activate on a new chain, book their monster, and they won't be able to they won't be able to summon from hand. So he goes talents to take, and I'm like, okay, let me just get rid of 2 of my higher impact monsters here. And then let me shuffle back the Silvera because I want to be able to woes on his turn. And it doesn't matter if he takes the Sylvie or the Esteller because I'll still have the other one left and I can just bring out the other target with woes to go back into Silvera again. So now he summons Gigi and I'm like, okay, well, I still had a material on board so I can bring out Silvera again, and then he scoops. So that was match 1 to me. Then let us do the mirror next, and then I'll do the Tenpai one last. So here I win the dice roll, and this is one of those hands that I was talking about. So if you are not on a breaker build, or you have more engine, or you're not playing other engines like Fiendsmith or Centurion or whatever, these hands are more likely. And this is one of the reasons that I felt like playing a card like Black Goat Laughs in my non-engine would have been useful, because this hand is basically unplayable. But I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna pass because I'm not wasting my imperm. Like, what do I even get if I add off of this? Like, I would have to draw into something that was also useful, and I would have lost my imperm. And then if he has a hand trap, it's even worse. So I'm like, I'll just keep the stuff in hand. So the guy opens box and a stellar, and I'm like, okay, bro. Like, I had the most horrible hand of all time, and he has box a stellar. Now in these scenarios, I feel like you don't know if they are on breakers or not, and so you would always play around talents if you can. So I go for imperm, and you could argue that if your hand is super bricked and they have opened the best 2 cards in the entire deck, that maybe you should save the imperm for later and hope that your other, like Nib Veiler clears their board first, and you save the imperm for your turn for whatever's left. So maybe I made a mistake here. But what I also have found is that if you use the imperm in that scenario, it usually forces them to choose between getting woes or some other type of like extra deck monster. And so I thought, if I Nib Veiler, I might still get Silverid on my turn and lose. So anyhow, he gets the Azirun off of the Silhouette Rabbit and he attacks me, and I draw another Rusia, and I'm like, bro, come on, dude. So I normal the Rusia, I special the Rusia, and he brings out the Azirun. So I'm like, so this is the one that negates a summon. And I had been thinking, let me just sit on Baguska. But I don't know really know what I'm supposed to do against the Azirun in that case, because sitting on the Baguska until I drew something could have been useful. So yeah, I just I lose that one. Then let's look at the second match in the mirror. So here, I feel like my siding pattern, my side deck was not very good. I hadn't adjusted it at this point, and so I didn't have stuff that I really wanted to side. Now, in this case, obviously, you send the tails, because if they imperm veil or whatever on the Esteller or Ash or whatever, you're going to get back the tails, and you're going to be able to use it immediately. So it's like, obviously you don't want this to be negated, but that's what happens. This is why the combos that you see on YouTube and Twitter and stuff are not real. So you just have to play in a way that gives you as much extension as possible. So now I activate the tails, and I get the LZ, but I've used my normal. And if I were to search Rusia, because I can't normal the Sylvie, I would be in the same position where I have to get rid of the D-barrier. Like, there's no way to get around the fact that I would have to use the D-barrier. And I'm thinking I want to keep a spell or trap in my hand so that I can get the Esteller back from grave. But there's not really a way to effectively do that. So I just make the Silvera and I go into Diabel to add back the barrier. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to pass on barrier Diabel, which is horrible. Like, this is bad. This is not good. And he activates evenly, so I just call Synchro because there's nothing. There's no spell or trap to send for this to do anything anyhow, so it doesn't matter if I negate myself. And I just call Synchro, and I'm like, okay, I hope that this guy can't play. So he normals Sylvie, he goes for the tails, he brings out the Rusia, specials the Rusia, and he dumps the reframing. And I'm like, bro, if I lose to a guy that keeps reframing in going second, I don't know what to do. Summons the rabbit and makes the Typhon. Now this is a weird play. Maybe, so like obviously it depends on what's in your extra deck, but that could be part of the problem. Especially if you're keeping this card in and you have like the Manadium Amritara still in your deck. You know, I feel like a rank 4 could have been better than that. But anyhow, he makes Typhon, and I think he forgets to attack here. So I normal summon the Sylvie, and it gets Veilered. So my only other play is to Thrust. And at this point, I'm like, the talent, if I talents to take, I'm basically making Little Knight, and I'm banishing, you know, like a Sylvie or a Rusia, or I'm then losing to this in battle phase, or I banish the Star Slayer, and I'm just sitting on a single Little Knight. So I feel like that's not good enough, and we're just going to be playing top deck wars at that point, and I'm like already a game down. So I draw 2, and I draw, you know, Ash Nib, so I'm like, okay, dude. But I still have the Rusia Engrave, which was the reason that I did this play, because even if I didn't draw into something playable, I could still get a level 4. And so now I bring out the Baguska, and this is one of those things that, you know, you're not going to see this in YouTube combos or Twitter combos because this doesn't look cool. But this is one of the reasons that cards like Baguska are useful, is because this stuff happens and you need to sit on something. So he normals a Stellar and he sends the Toy Soldier. Obviously, I'm not going to Ash because the cards are going to be negated. And now I'm wondering, does he not play Little Knight? There are people who play cards just that they own, and, you know, if you're on a budget, you might not be playing cards like Little Knight, so... But I don't know why you wouldn't, like, if you did have Little Knight, why not just turn Typhon and something into Little Knight to banish the Baguska, because it's linked monster, so it can't go to defense, so it won't be negated. And that gives me a turn to play. So I detach the material as the maintenance cost for Baguska, and because I have access to another Sylvie, I discard the Rusia, because I always want both in rotation in case that comes up. So I activate the Sylvie, and then he's like, oh, okay, he has a game. So yeah. And then I believe that was that the second game? Yeah, so this is the third game now in the mirror. So he starts box, and I'm like, bro, not again, dude. All I have for interaction right now is a single Imperm. So I need to draw something really good on my turn. And it's in the same position where it's like, okay, now at this point, I didn't have Nib like Ash or Veiler or whatever like in the previous game. And so at this point, you really can't argue, just hold the Imperm. You know, maybe hope that he makes Apo. Like he goes for the 5th summon Apo, and then at least your Imperm trades super, super well. So, you know, maybe this was a mistake. And I should have just allowed him to play. But then if he doesn't make the Apo, like if he goes for a less greedy play, then I'll be punished. So I'm not even really sure what is optimal, but I'm basically just hoping to trade the Infirm for Woes. And then he makes Crystal Wing, and I'm like, what, dude? Like, that cannot be worth it. You still have like a Zolkin on board, which was 2 bodies that isn't doing anything. Yeah, I also just don't think Zolkin is very good in this version, and I also don't think that the Amritara, I don't know, I don't like this card, to be honest. But he does get the Azurune statue, and he links off the Zolkin, and he leaves the Amritara on board. So this is not like super optimal. But at this point, I draw a Droll, and I'm like, oh, dude, why didn't you give me the Droll last turn? So I'm basically cooked, bro. I'm actually straight cooked. So I activate the toy box. He brings out the Azurune so that he can pop it with the rabbit. And I'm like, you know, there's not really anything for me to do. You know, even if I had some follow-up in hand, like if I had Tails in hand, if he activates Crystal Wing and destroys my monster, the Tails would be dead. But he doesn't negate it, which I find kind of strange. I guess because he has the Droll in hand. But I feel like, wouldn't you just keep the Droll in hand? Like, why not negate and destroy my monster? Because I've used my normal summon, and any Tails or Extender like Rusia I've drawn in my hand is dead. So I feel like you should have Crystal Winged, and you wouldn't have lost a card for it. But, you know, it doesn't really matter because there's nothing, yeah, there's nothing for me to do. So I lose that game. Okay, now let me show you Tenpai. I was actually molding, bro, because I played like 3 Tenpais in a row, and they were drawing Sangan summoning like water every single turn, and I was so upset. So this is game 1 against a different Tenpai player. There were just a bunch of Tenpai players on ladder. Anyhow, so we opened the box and the Stellar, so that means, you know, you don't really fear a single interruption so much. The soldier gives us the Rusia, and I bring out the Arciela here, get back the tails. I go into Gallant Granite, and I actually have like a lot of cards. He didn't. I was holding certain cards like the LZ in hand in case he did nib, because I wasn't going for the Apple line. And then when he doesn't nib, I'm like, okay, he probably doesn't have nib at all. So this was game 1, and so I banished the Ash because I wasn't sure if it was going to be like Snake Eyes, and sometimes in weird scenarios they interact with a fire monster in grave, so I'm like, I might as well just banish it off the Little Knight. So I have the Arciela in grave, and I have Arusia, so that is live. I've used the Gallant Granite as material. So I have the Nib Veiler Wombo combo in my hand, and generally when I see this, I'm like, I'm cooking, bro. Like, like what are they going to do to me? If they Dark Ruler, you know, Lightning Storm, whatever, I don't care. I have Nib Veiler in hand. And then this dude goes Dark Hole, dude. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll save my monsters. And then this bro goes Sangan Summoning. So I'm like, my Diabell was my out to the summoning by bringing out Zapper Shrimp, and then the Zapper Shrimp would have popped the summoning, and then I would have been fine. And I felt safe moving the Diabell off of field because I wanted to keep the Little Knight, and I didn't need another White Forest Synchro in grave because I already had one in grave, so like I should still be able to bring out woes, you know, worst case scenario. But once he uses the summoning, I'm like, I actually just lost this game. I just straight up lost this game. There's literally nothing that I can do. Because if he makes Transcendent Dragion, I can't play. You know, I'd have to wait till he enters battle phase and go for, you know, a Book of Moon play. But he makes Transcendent Dragion, which is obviously correct. So end of main, I summon, he goes Raigeki. I bring out a card, I'm like, okay, whatever. What can you do? All right, so going against Tenpai, next game. So I draw a box and a starter. So I'm like, yes. Also, I should say, I lost the first game, but I had just lost to Tenpai multiple times in a row on ladder. And even though I knew that he was on breakers, I was like, nah, I'm stubborn. I'm going first. I don't care that you have Raigeki, Dark Hole, whatever. I am going first, and I want to win. So I activate box. I activate the LZ. Now, one thing that you should notice, one thing that you should always remember, is that the Stellar, while it does use your normal summon, it plays around hand traps better because even though they can't imperm or Veiler the LZ, if they Ash it, the card doesn't even come out, and so you don't get the search. But I do get the Toy Soldier, and this does give me like a normal. So I search the Sylvie because I already had the Rusia, and I effect to bring out the woes. Also, another thing is that if you Stellar, it's better around Droll. Whereas if you LZ, you're gonna search the thing and then you're immediately gonna get drolled. So anyhow, I continue playing here. I bring out the Stellar off the tank and I reset the woes. I make the Arciela. I send the woes because I'm gonna go into Diabell and bring back the woes again. And I make the rabbit. So I'm like, okay, I know this scumbag is gonna hard draw Sangan Summoning. So I'm going to search Silhouette Trick and I'm going to negate his Sangan Summoning and I'm going to be fine, okay? So then I go into Little Knight and I'm like, okay, this is my end board. It's basically like the same kind of play, just through an Ash. So I have the Rabbit, I have the Diabell, I have the Little Knight, okay? I have the Black Goat Laughs, which is pretty... It's not a game ender against Tenpai, but it is a very good card against Tenpai. Before Genroku came out, you could just call Chundra and then you could chill. You could take a nap, bro, and they wouldn't be OTKing you. But now that they have another tuner in Genroku, it's not like just an instant win. Anyhow, I have the Ash, I have the Veiler, okay, I have follow-up here, I have the Stellar in rotation in Grave. And the only problem with how my resource game is set up right now, well, I mean, it would have been nice to have an LZ in Grave too, but I don't have a White Forest Synchro in Grave, and that will come up. So this guy activates Dark Hole again, bro. And at this point, my mistake, okay, was dodging with the Diabell. I should have dodged with the Silhouette Rabbit and the Little Knight, so that I would have a Synchro Monster, a White Forest Synchro Monster in my grave, so that my Sylvia and my Rusia would have been live. So that's a huge mistake I made. I forgot that I didn't have it in grave. So now he activates Sanguine Summoning, and I'm like, nah, dude, I knew you hard Druid, you absolute savage beast. But this time I'm prepared. I have the Silhouette trick. Okay, he goes Sanguine Summoning. I'm like, nah, bro, I have the Ash. This dude had the Called By, dude. So he calls by my Ash, and he adds the Genroku. So at this point, I'm like, okay, the Sanguine Summoning is negated. I have Valor in hand. I have the Woes, but I made the huge misplay of not making my tuners live in grave. So really, he needs to not have access to another Sanguine Summoning so that I can Valor. And I think I should be fine with the Goat. So he summons the Genroku, he normal summons the Pydra, and I'm like, zero chance, bro. Zero chance. There's no way that this guy even has the option to add another Sanguine Summoning and like Black Rose the field or whatever. Not happening. So I Valor that immediately. Now he brings out the Chandra. And I think I might have made a mistake here. Let's see, I forgot what I did. Oh yes. So this was so foolish of me. So he goes Battle Phase, okay? And in Battle Phase, for those who don't know, unlike the main phase, there is a start step to the battle phase. So normally, if you enter main phase, the turn player has priority. You can take the first action. In the battle phase, you are not allowed to declare an attack before leaving the start step of the battle phase. So he's trying to proceed in the battle phase, but I in the start step activate Black Goat last, and I call Bident Dragion or whatever. And that was so dumb because he can obviously just chain the Chandra to summon the Bident Dragion before the Goat resolves. So, but I think I was afraid to do it in the main phase because I was like, well, what if I call Bident in the main phase and then he just activates, or he summons Black Rose and puts us on top deck wars. But that would have been fine because I had the Little Knight and the Diabell coming back, and then I would have just needed a single other card for my LZ to be live. So I shouldn't have been afraid here. And because one of them was negated, he couldn't like activate one, I chain Goat, call Bident, and then he changed the other one to go into Bident. He couldn't have done that. So I should have just waited. But yeah, I was scared, dude. I had just been getting wrecked by Tenpai. So anyhow, he brings out the Bident anyhow, and then I guess this is a mistake because I don't know. No, I guess he. So like the less greedy play would have been maybe to bring out the Pydra so that he would have had another quick synchro. But now with two tuners, this has to resolve. The attack has to resolve here, but this activates in the damage step, and so I use Toy Box. I'm like, I'm not getting a Silvera anyhow, so I'm gonna send my Woes off of Toy Box to destroy the Chandra. So yeah, he got a little bit greedy. I think he should have brought out the Pydra, and then like he didn't have a very good play to go for because if he made Transcendent Dragion, it's like okay, he's not OTKing, because he wouldn't have attacked 3 times. He could have made Dispatter and had like a single negate, but it wouldn't have been enough, I think, when my Diabell and Little Knight came back. So yeah, I think that play was a little bit greedy. So then he surrenders. And now I believe it's just was it the last game? So okay, he starts with Prosperity. That was the second game I showed, right? I didn't skip one. Yeah, so okay, he uses Prosperity and he adds Called By. And normally if you add Called By, it suggests that you have enough gas to already be able to play, but Called By is pretty good against our deck, so I'm actually not sure what to read, and I don't have any hand traps right now. But he Pydras for the Sanguine Kaiman, so I'm wondering, does he have Field Spell, or like if I didn't chain anything to the Pydra, he knows I don't have anything, so he doesn't need it, he's just going to go for the Kaiman, I don't know. Also, this was crazy because he lost and he decided to go first. And I wasn't sure what he was going to do. But anyhow, so he makes the Heretic Seal. Let's see what I draw here. I draw a Toy Box. So you may be wondering, why did he make the Bident Dragion if he was just going to make Heavenly Spheres? Because he could have just turned the 2 bodies into the spheres without going through his resources. But this actually does come up sometimes if your opponent is not expecting it. The once per duel effect says, if 3 or more attacks have been declared this turn, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your grave, then you can destroy 1 spell or trap on the field. This does not have to be in his turn. It doesn't have to be his monsters that we're attacking. It's any 3 attacks. If any 3 attacks were declared, he can bring it out. So I think that this was like a sneaky way to climb into the spheres and still give him some other potential way to survive if I was trying to OTK. Now, all I know, aside from the Bident, is that he has a called by set. Obviously, it would be set. He didn't use it on his first turn. And so I need to bait in some way. So I start with the box, and I'm just trying to see if he does anything, or if I can like box destroy my soldier and make him use the called by on it. Because I still have, even though not a very good way, I still have a way to make some type of play afterwards because I have the tails and the Rusia. And the Rusia can get me a draw, which will replace itself, and then I'll still be able to tails for like an LZ. But he chains spheres, so I think that he didn't read this card because the box is not once per turn. And he brings out the Koki Meru Drago, and I'm like, bro, all these, they're all the same, bro. These actual animals trying to floodgate me so that I can't even play the game. So I normal summon the Rusia, okay? And I want to see, like, before I do anything, is there anything else I can bait? Because obviously if you normal summon Rusia, you are in a horrendous position. And he uses Ash here, which I think is a huge mistake because the tails is going to set itself back off of the Rusia, and the tails is still live. So you would obviously rather save the Ash for the tails, which is now known, because the tails could be anything, and since I've used my normal, it's basically guaranteed to be an LZ. And he knows that I have a soldier set, so the LZ will be live, even if he knows nothing else in my hand. So yeah, a random draw is not as valuable as getting the tails back, so he should not have Ashed there. So the tails comes back, and I'm like, bro, show me what you have, you dirty animal. I attack his card. Luckily, it's at 0 attack and 0 defense because it came off of seals, and I can't special summon light or dark monsters. So like that's my entire deck, So I can't even reactivate the box to pop the soldier because the soldier won't come back because it's a light monster. So I attack, and I'm like, okay, you have nothing. You have nothing, you dog. You just have a called by and then a card that I don't know. So now I activate the box again, and it was a Cosmic Cyclone. And I feel like that's kind of... So at this point, he probably has lost, but I feel like he should have saved this because it could have been, it would have been realistic for it to be like a D barrier or something, and I might have played super awkwardly. But I know that the last card is called by. So he should have... Like, if he thought that my play was Toy Box to pop my own soldier, he should have just let me do it and called by the soldier, and then I would have had an unknown to play around that I might have thought was D barrier. But he Cosmics, and I'm like, okay, now I know your last card, you animal. I'll put the soldier in the grave, and now he calls by it anyhow. So it's like, you should have just used the call by on that and saved this to make me think that you had a D-barrier. And then I would have gotten to this point, and I would have been like, okay, he's going to D-barrier now. And then if he didn't, I would have been like, what is this, Daruma, whatever? So I don't know. It could have made me make a mistake or something. So now I Arciela, I bring back the Woes. I special the Rusia because the first one I normaled. And I already used my battle phase, okay? So I'm like, let's get this animal out of here. I banish the Bident Dragon so that never comes back to haunt me again. And now this is dumb of me. In the end phase, I shuffle back my Arciela to bring out the Rusia. And my thinking was, if I somehow cycle through Synchro Monsters, I have 2 Rusias in grave, and I want the other one to be live because it's once per turn. But I also knew this guy was on breakers, like Raigeki Dark Hole. So I shouldn't have done this. And what you see is that he actually draws the Raigeki. And so yeah, I shouldn't have done that because I could have, if I had left it, he would have activated this card. Okay, the Little Knight would have died, I guess. I would have afterwards brought out the Rusia, then I would have Woes, then I would have Synchro summoned. But anyhow, at least this way the Little Knight was saved. So that then he concedes in the end because he has nothing else to do. So I hope that you enjoyed some of that analysis. Oh Lord, this is half an hour long. I will try to chapter the sections so that you can just skip through them if you want to. This is the deck that I was using in the end. I forgot to play Skill Drain in the beginning, and then I realized that this card is broken and it should be in my side deck. I can't decide between these 2 cards right now, but the Tenpai matchup can be difficult enough if they hard draw the summoning that I like to have this card off of the rabbit, but I don't like to main it because it's a brick going second. I'm going to playtest the pure version a little bit more. I feel like my experience on this deck shows me that Prosperity is almost needed because there are too many hands where you draw like too many hand traps or a weird combination of things and you need to Prosperity. And the hand traps, if you clog on them going first, you actually cannot play. Whereas at least if you have a spell or trap, even though it's horrendous and not at all efficient, you can at least play. And so the prosperity also helps that. But the thing is, I don't want to go below the 15 hand traps, and the Black Goat Lass is kind of a weird card that I don't want to count as a hand trap, so I don't really know what to change. I don't want to change my normal summons because in a pure version, I kind of want to max out on these, partly because I'll see them more often and have a normal, and partly because I get to cycle through them more often like as the game goes on and have like targets and deck to bring out off of a Stellar or off of Woes. So another thing that I may consider is just playing like maybe 2 Prosperity at a 42 card count, because there really isn't anything that I want to cut down in the deck. Especially if we're on pure, I like the 3 tails. So yeah, I don't know if I would want to go to 43, but adding 2 consistency cards and going to 42 isn't really going to change the math in a negative way. So I think I may play 42 with 2 Prosperity, and that'll be my final change for the main deck. The side deck patterns are not... I think I'm going to do a video on siding patterns, but this is not like super optimal for siding patterns. I mean, this is really just like kind of a generic bunch of options toolbox extra deck. I think one thing that I would probably change though is I probably would decide what to put in for a Rafflesia, Gravedigger's Trap Hole, and Time Space Trap Hole, or some other second target for the Rafflesia, because I think this is really, really good for helping to play around Droll. I made a video on that, so you can check my channel for how to play around Droll. But I like the Rafflesia after siding, so I feel like I might put in 3 spots in my side deck for the Rafflesia. But yeah, anyhow, thanks for watching.